Hi everyone, welcome back. This is Tuplex. I've made a couple of minor updates to the base. First of all, I decided to start to take advantage of these buffer chests, and I just set up a series of these that are requesting items that I like to keep in my inventory. Most of these are items that I'm already requesting with my logistics, player logistics slots, excuse me. And the reason I like using these buffer chests is because you can basically tell the logistics system to put storage here in the buffer chest. Now this is different from a requester chest, because with a requester chest, once the items go inside the requester chest, they are no longer available to the rest of the logistics network. Unless you... yeah, they're no longer available. So once items go in here, they basically disappear from the logistics network, and the only way to get them back into the logistics network is to take them out of these chests and put them in a storage chest or a provider chest of some kind. So the advantage of the buffer chests is that you can put requests on here. The items will get placed into these chests, but they will still be available to logistics bots and construction bots and so forth. So the reason I did this is so that when I come here in my train and I step out of the train, if I need any of these items to be delivered to me, they're going to be right here. I'll get them much more quickly than if I have to wait for them to come, you know, all the way from the make everything area and over here by bot. So this should just make things a little bit more convenient for us. Actually, I'm going to put some green circuits on here too. It's always good to have red and green circuits on hand. So, and then since these all still appear in the network, putting the items here is not going to result in producing more of these items, since they still appear in the network, at least as long as I have the items controlled with a logistics network condition on the inserters. Some of them I don't, but some of them I do. In any case, the other thing that I've done recently is I added another centrifuge for the nuclear fuel reprocessing, so that our spent uranium fuel cells will come here and they'll get converted back into uranium-238. And then those go into a provider chest so that they're available for the Covarex enrichment process. If we look at this now, we've got 22 uranium-235 available. I have almost 800 fuel cells made. And what I did is I put a limit on the production of the fuel cells, just so we can accumulate the uranium. I don't want to turn all the uranium into fuel cells right away, because I'd like to keep some of it around so that later on we have some available to use it for making nuclear weapons or nuclear fuel. So in this case, I think I set this to only produce fuel cells when we have less than 100. Now we also need iron plate, and since we already have our acid train delivering sulfuric acid over there, I just added another car to the acid train, which just went by. You can sort of see it there. I just added another car that holds a couple hundred iron plates, and then when it gets over to the uranium station, they unload into a provider chest. And I limited this chest so that it only holds 200 plates. That's more than enough for what we need. So that was a fairly easy way just to get the iron plates over there without too much hassle. And everything else is basically the same. The other thing that I've done is, in order to increase the speed of my personal train, I added a second engine. So I removed one of the rail cars and added a second engine to it, and then, you know, I split the coal off here so that we can fuel that one as well. It accelerates much more quickly now, which you'll see here in a moment. So, next thing I'd like to do, now that we have nuclear power working... Oh, and I should mention... Yeah, let me stop here. Hang on a second. I just noticed that there's no radar over there where our steam power is. I couldn't get steam power to turn off completely. It seemed like it wanted to balance the consumption of nuclear and steam power for some reason. So what I've done is I put a power switch here. So all the power from the steam engine setup has to go through this power switch before it gets to the rest of the grid. You know, so and right now the switch is turned off. So if we click here, we can see that the only thing we have running are the steam engines because that part of the network is isolated. And it's still producing a little bit of power just to power the lights and the inserters that I have over here. They do consume a little bit of electricity, but not very much. You know, it's only 32 kilowatts, probably a little bit more at night when the lights go on. And then if we click on this power pole, you can see that all of our power for all the rest of the network is coming from the nuclear turbines. And then if we need more power available to the rest of the network, we can just come over here and turn this switch on and it'll go back in. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you with that radar that for some reason I picked up and didn't put back. All right, so let's move my train out of the way. What I'm going to do now is go to the reactor area, and I am going to set up some fuel control. Uranium, there we go. Just because I think a lot of people are going to want to see that. Again, I no longer feel that it's all that necessary because even with a fairly small uranium processing setup like this, you can supply more than enough uranium to power a nuclear reactor for, you know, modest to large bases. You know, maybe not a huge megabase, but for most bases, this will be enough. In fact, I think this would probably be enough even to get up to 1,000 science a minute and have enough power. But like I said, I know a lot of people are probably going to be interested in seeing how that can be set up. So let's go ahead and do that today. Now, the important thing to remember, or the important thing to note, is that in order to control the fuel, you have to monitor how much steam you have. And the only way that you can do that is by collecting excess steam into storage tanks. Now, when I say excess steam, what I'm talking about is, you know, our reactors heat up to 500 plus degrees. The heat exchangers convert water into steam, and the uranium fuel gets used up whether we need the full capacity of this power plant or not. So what we can do to take advantage of that is to use storage tanks to collect steam that's not being used by the turbines. We can store that steam in the tanks, and that's, I suppose, a little bit unrealistic because you can store the steam and it doesn't lose any temperature at all over time. That's what helps to make this work. But in any case, you can store the steam, and then you can use control circuits to monitor how much steam you have available and only insert more fuel if your steam is running low and you need more power. So that's the general concept behind this. So the first thing we'll need to do, of course, is to set up the steam storage. So I'm going to relocate these two power poles. I'm just going to move them down by one so that we can get some underground pipes here. And I'll bring them down to there. And we'll set up a small storage array to hold our steam. Okay, and I'm going to mirror that over here. Let's make one more tank. I think 8 tanks ought to be plenty. These will hold 25,000 each, so the 8 tanks will hold 200,000 units of steam. And let's also connect these two together so that we have a shared steam source on both sides. Okay, so that's step number 1, is to start collecting steam. And as you can see, the steam will gradually accumulate as long as we're not using all the steam in the turbines, which right now we're not. We're only running at about 25–30% capacity. So we should be able to collect a lot of steam fairly quickly. All right, let me make some more wires. The next step is to wire these tanks together. And then we need to connect these to the power poles so that we can read the contents. Let's see. And I want these to be tied together, so I think I'm going to need another power pole. Unfortunately, that looks a little messy, but so be it. Okay, so now you can see if we hover over the power pole, we can see the total quantity of steam that we have in all of those tanks. All right, and then we're going to run this up these poles. And I'm going to bring this signal all the way over here so that I can put my control circuits up here in this area. All right, so let me make a substation. I like to use a substation for this just because we can provide power to a large area so that we can build our circuit without having to have power poles everywhere. All right, so like I mentioned, first I'm going to make a few decider combinators. I'll make 5. I think that'll be enough. So we have basically 2 conditions where we want to insert fuel. One is that our steam is less than some threshold. So we could start by saying that we're going to turn it on, that we're going to add more fuel to the reactors when our steam is below 50%, let's say. And we could go even lower if our consumption is not too high. But I want to make sure that we insert the fuel with enough time to get the steam generated before the power dips too low and we start to lose electricity in the base. All right, so let's we'll start by setting up a combinator that will monitor our steam level. Okay, so we're just going to hook up a wire from there to the input on this decider combinator, and we're going to tell it if steam is less than 100,000, that's 50%, because remember we have 8 tanks. Then we're going to output, let's say, a green signal. Okay, and then what I like to do is I like to place a light there and tell this to enable if the green signal is greater than 0. So that way we'll be able to visually see if we get a green signal or not. Actually, maybe this should be a yellow signal instead. Why don't we do that? Because yellow means kind of like caution, steam is running low. Okay, so if we see a yellow signal, that means our steam is running low, and that's one of the conditions we need to insert more fuel. Now, the other condition before we insert more fuel is that there is not any fuel already in there. And that's a little bit trickier. So for that, we need to keep track of when we insert fuel and when we take fuel out. So once we insert fuel, we need to have a circuit that remembers that there's fuel inserted. And then when an empty fuel cell comes out, we need to reset that circuit so that we know that there's no fuel currently in there. And we can do that with a circuit called an SR latch. And the way that we set that up is we use another decider combinator, and we set it up so that S is greater than R. And we'll output green. So what does that mean, S greater than R? Well, let me demonstrate. And we have to hook the output up to the input. And then let me make a constant combinator so I can show you how this works. Okay, so I'm just going to hook this up to the input. And we're going to turn this on when we get a green signal. All right. So this way this works is if I give it an S signal, output green. Oh, I'm sorry. This needs to output an S, not a green. S is greater than R, output S. Greater than 0. There we go. Greater than 0. Okay. So we can see here I'm giving it an S signal, and the S and the R basically stand for set and reset. So I want to set this circuit when I give it an S signal. All right. So now if I turn this off, you can see that it kind of remembers that it had an S signal. So it's going to stay turned on, if you will, until I reset it with an R. So let me change this to R. And now when I turn this on, it'll turn the light off. Okay? And then when I turn this off, it remembers that it was reset, and it's not going to turn on again until it gets another S signal. There we go. Right, so it kind of remembers, it basically remembers what the last signal it got was. Actually, I'm going to put this back here so I can reset it again. Let me give it an R to turn it off. Okay, I'm going to leave that off, but I'm going to keep that around just so we can set the condition. Now what we can do here is we can add yet another combinator. And I'm going to hook this up to my input inserter that's putting the fuel into the reactor. And so I'm going to tell this, well, first I'm going to tell this to read my hand contents. And yeah, I'm going to leave that enabled for now. And we'll do read mode of hold. So when this picks up a fuel cell, it'll send a signal here. And I'm going to tell this that when it reads a fuel cell signal, so fuel cell greater than 0, I want it to output the set signal. All right, and then I'm going to hook that up to the input of this decider combinator. Okay. And we can test this. Now, see, right now it doesn't have any fuel cells at all. So if I set mode of operation to none, it'll start to insert them, and then we'll see this get set. So let's test that real quick. Okay. And like I said before, this is going to stay in that condition until it gets a reset signal. Okay, so I'm going to take those fuel cells out. I'll leave that one. Actually, I'm just going to remove the inserter over there for now. Okay, so this light is basically telling us that we have fuel in the reactor, because as soon as it picks up a piece of fuel to put it in, it's going to turn that light on, and we're going to have an S signal. And that gets activated by this. Now, when do we want to reset it? Well, we want to reset it when that fuel cell is used, and we know that it's used because we'll take out a spent fuel cell. All right, so we're going to need another combinator for that. And we're going to tell this one that when it picks up a used fuel cell, we want to output a reset. Okay, and we'll wire that up to the input of our SR latch. And that's going to come from this inserter. Fortunately, it reaches. Mode of operation, none. I don't want it to turn on and off. I only want to read the hand contents. And I'll put it in hold mode. All right, so as soon as this fuel cell is used up and it comes out, it'll reset this, and then it'll stay off until this one inserts another one. So we'll be able to see that work in a minute or so. Okay, so we've got this one that's telling us if we have enough steam or not. And we have this one telling us if there's fuel in or not. So the last thing that we need to do is to set up one more combinator that tells this one to insert. Okay. And we want it to insert if we have a yellow signal and we have an R signal on the decider, because an R signal here means that there's no fuel already inserted. So I'm actually going to need one more combinator. This is an arithmetic. All right, and this is set to multiply. This is almost done, so let's keep our eye on here. Let's just wait a second until the fuel comes out so that we can make sure that this turns off. Perfect. Okay. So now well, this one still has fuel. Let me take that out. If neither one of these had fuel in, then we would be running these turbines on the steam in the tanks, but we're still making heat. So, but we'll get this all synchronized when we're done. All right, so now I'm just going to use, no, we'll use red wires. So I'm going to hook up this one to this one, and I want this to multiply the yellow signal by the R signal. Okay, so that way if we have yellow and R at the same time, we'll get a positive signal here. Otherwise, it's going to be 0, and we'll output green. All right, and I'm going to connect a light so we can monitor that. We'll tell this to turn on if green is greater than 0 and use colors. And then that green signal will go to the input here. Actually, I don't even need that one. All right, and then we can send the green signal to this inserter, and we can tell it to work when it has a green signal greater than 0. And I want to I want to override the stack size to 1 because I only want it to insert one fuel cell instead of a full stack, which in this case would be 2 because these can hold 2. All right, so I'm going to remove that one. I'm going to take these fuel cells out for a moment, and I need to hook this same thing up over here because all the inserters that add fuel need to be controlled to the same circuit, or controlled with the same circuit, sorry. All right, that doesn't reach, so I'm going to have to go to that pole. And then from there over to here. And then I can just copy and paste the same settings. All right, and now I can add the fuel back in. Copy, paste. Okay, so the fuel's there, but it's not inserting anything. Now for the R signal, I only need, eventually all these reactors are going to be synchronized with the fuel. So I only need to monitor this spent fuel coming out on one of these, but all the inserters need to be wired up with this controller right here. Okay, so this is almost done. Okay, so now we have no fuel in the reactors. Now they still are hot. You can see that the temperature is over 800 degrees. The temperature here is over 800 degrees. So these are still producing steam. But eventually the temperature will drop because we're heating water with no additional heat coming in. If we take a look at our steam tanks, these are all pretty close to full. We have 165,000 steam. And this will slowly start to drop over time. Once the heat exchangers stop producing steam, the turbines will continue to run on the steam that's in these tanks because it'll flow back through here over this way. That's how the system can work. And then once the steam drops below a certain level, which we've set up here, then it'll add more fuel. So since the steam is still fairly high, what we can do to sort of simulate this is we can change our steam value. So let me move this out of the way so that we can see what's going on. So just for now, let's set the steam value to 175,000. Okay, so as soon as I set this, it'll register that steam is low. We'll see the yellow light go on, and then it should insert fuel right away. Let's try it. Okay, and it is not working. Why is it not working? It's not working because there is no R signal right now. I need to give it an R signal to prime itself. Oh no. That's because I get no output here unless it's an S. Okay, so I'm going to need to fix this. I think we will need another combinator. Okay. Sorry about that. Let me just fix this here real quick. So I'm going to disconnect that line, and I'm going to send this up here. So I'm going to tell this if S is, we'll just say less than 1. So if this is not set, meaning there's no fuel, then I'm going to give it a green signal. Okay, and let's wire up the light. All right, so we have a green signal coming out because there is no S currently set, means that there's no fuel. Okay, and let's change this to a green signal as well instead of yellow. All right, and then what we can, no, that's okay. And then I can connect the output here, and they just inserted in the output here. Okay, and then what I'm going to do instead is tell it to insert while green is equal to 2. Now, why is this still on? S is 1. And this should give us green only when S is less than 1. And I still have a green signal. Okay, so nothing coming out here. There is an S here. Okay. All right, let's use a different color here. There we go. All right, so we have one green here and no green there. Let me take these extra fuel cells out. Okay, inserter capacity is done. Let's see. Let's continue with braking force. All right. Sorry this is taking a while, guys. I haven't done this in a while. Okay. I'm just going to rewire. Okay, no, that's right. So I want that there. That's going to tell us when we insert. Okay, let me... Okay, so now these are both green. All right, so let me make one more combinator here. I'm just going to try to simplify this a bit. Maybe I'm far beyond simplification at this point. All right, so now I'll just say if green is equal to 2, then let's output a blue signal. Okay. And let's put a light on that just so we can see it. And I'm going to use a green wire for this. Okay, so blue means that we should be inserting fuel. All right, and then I'll connect that green wire to this pole, and then that green wire goes to each of these inserters. Let's disconnect that red one. All right, and I'm going to set these so that if blue is greater than 0, it should insert fuel. Okay. So fuel is inserted, and this is still not quite right. Okay, it's just that this light is picking up a green signal from the steam, and it's copying that. Okay, so I need this input. we go. Okay, this should work now. All right, so we're going to have to wait for the fuel cell to come out of here. Our steam is still below our threshold. So let's cut away for a moment while we wait for this fuel cell to be used up. And when I come back, hopefully we'll see that this is all working. Be right back. Okay, so the fuel is nearly spent. As soon as that comes out, we should see it insert another piece of fuel. And only one piece of fuel. Perfect. All right, now if we set this back to 100,000, as it was before, then that green light turns off. Okay, we continue to have our set light on because we have fuel inserted, but the steam condition doesn't require fuel, and it won't add more fuel until we have a steam condition on and there's no fuel currently added. So this will help conserve the nuclear fuel and only use it when it's absolutely necessary. I do apologize for taking so long with that. The problem I was having over here is that all the red wires will add together if they are in contact with one another. So the problem I was having is I had a green signal from here to the input of here on a red wire. And then I also had a red wire connected from here to there. And because those two red wires were connected to the same point, that same signal was traveling through the entire red wire network. And that was causing this light to turn on because this turns on when green is greater than 0. So even though the green wasn't coming from this combinator, it was picking up a green signal from over here, and that was kind of messing things up. So that's why I connected this output to this input with a green wire, because the green and the red circuits will stay separated. And that's what I had to do to fix it. Hopefully that makes sense. I will grab a blueprint of this whole setup here, and I'll make that available in case anyone wants to use this. Basically, all you would have to do is connect the inserters, and at least one of the inserters taking the spent fuel cells out to the appropriate place on the circuits, and then you could use it in your own nuclear power setup. Now, as we add additional reactors to this setup, we will have to take this green wire to all of the inserters that are adding fuel. So every inserter that's adding fuel needs to be hooked up to the same control network. But again, we only need one that's taking fuel out to be connected here to reset the circuit. All right, well, that's going to do it for today. You may have questions. If so, please let me know in the comments, and I'll do my best to answer those. Hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you all soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.